Hi guys, my name is Erin and I'm part of the Triple H team and I help out behind the scenes, just doing small things and helping out with social media. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about myself and my journey through mental health and hopefully give a little bit of helpful advice. I guess 3 years ago now, I was initially given a diagnosis of PTSD and depression. And at the time, I was a student athlete in university, so I was studying a lot, I was swimming a lot, and I was really performance driven. And so when I started struggling mentally, it was hard because I had to take some time off of training, and I had to reduce my course load, and that was really hard on me. Just because I had to rearrange my whole life to kind of deal with this thing that really needed to be dealt with. Then later on, I guess we also added the diagnosis of general anxiety disorder and panic disorder. And my psychiatrist also added something called pathological guilt. Pathological guilt is basically just when you feel overwhelming guilt to the point that it affects your life, and you feel guilty for things you don't need to feel guilty for, or that maybe the average person wouldn't feel guilty for, but you do, and it affects your life. So I guess technically I would have 5 different mental health disorders. But I'm still a fun girl. So I think whatever you have, it's all subjective, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not, the thing to note is that it's not 5 different things. It's really one thing, just presenting 5 different ways.
How's it going now? Like, where are you at now?
Now I'm doing well. I think everything is well managed. I still have hard days. I still have off days. I'm still seeing a counselor. I guess I would see them maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I find that really helpful, just to have someone to hold me accountable for the things and behaviors I'm trying to improve on in my life, and just continue to help me work through strategies for anxiety. And
so, what would you like people to know about mental illness?
I think something that I didn't know before I went through it was that it doesn't just happen to people that have bad lives, or doesn't just happen to people who have had horrible things happen to them. I think something people don't realize is that it's closer than they realize, and it's also a lot more hidden than they realize. So, yeah, just that mental health doesn't discriminate, and it's possible for anyone to have a mental illness. Mental illness doesn't need to be justified. You don't need to have something happen to you to get it. It's possible to just struggle with it just because you struggle with it. You don't need a reason to justify it. You know, just like any other disease, you don't need to justify why you have asthma. You just have it.
What are the things that helped you?
I think the first thing that helped me was just to start talking about it, and just to start talking about it with some close friends that really I could trust and understood me.
How do you know who to talk to?
I think someone who you feel comfortable confiding in, and someone who knows you really well, someone that's not going to treat you differently because they know this one thing about you, or they know that you're struggling, and someone who's not going to treat you like you're just fragile. Someone that just knows you and loves you for you, I would say, and won't change their opinion just because of, something you're going through.
What's the importance of professional help?
think seeking a professional is important because they're going to have insights that your friends or family doesn't have. And I think counselors are just always safe people to talk to. They have an objective point of view, and they're not there to judge you, just to help you. And yeah, it's just a really safe place. I've definitely been through a few counselors since I started trying to find help. And initially I was with someone that I felt like didn't understand me. We just didn't understand each other that well, and I think it doesn't really say that they're a bad counselor or a bad therapist. It's just that I think the relationship needs to be right, and it's something that you need to feel comfortable with. And so if your first counselor doesn't work out, it's important to keep trying, because you will find someone that you feel understands you.
What's counseling like?
I think at first, well, I thought counseling would be, like, I thought that I would have to talk about my issues straight away. I thought that the counselor would have an agenda to get through, you know, like, let's work through this, and then this, and then let's get to all your issues and fix you all up, right? But counseling, at least in my experience, the counselor really lets you be in the driver's seat. So you don't really have to talk about anything you're not comfortable with, and they don't force you to talk about anything. And eventually you'll want to talk about stuff, and eventually I actually found myself really looking forward to counseling because I really liked my counselor, and I really liked figuring out myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you.
And yeah, and just why I struggle with the things that I struggle with.
Do you take medication?
I do take medication, and I think medication for me and for most people, it's not a cure. It's not the solution to mental illness, but it gets you to a level where you can work on things. I think it helps, as in when you're on, for example, an antidepressant. You're not going to hit those emotional lows. It just kind of stabilizes you so you can work through things. But medication on its own isn't the solution, although it is a good help.
What do you do when you're having an off day?
I think the most important thing I can do is just to be patient with myself, and I think just acknowledge the fact that I'm having an off day, because if I try and pretend that it's not there, I think it goes worse.
Yeah.
Just bury my feelings. It's more important to just kind of acknowledge the fact, like, yeah, I'm feeling really anxious today, and it's gonna be a tough day. And I think something that's been really important to me is just to celebrate small victories on those days. So on those days, it's really hard to do everyday things. So if, for example, I'm studying that day and I know I have to get through this many chapters, just kind of taking a break at the end of each chapter and just celebrating that I did it, you know, because it really is, it's a huge win when you can do something normal on a day that you're struggling. It's also important to note that just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're relapsing or that you're back where you were and you haven't made any progress. Recovery from mental illness is not a straight line, right? So you're not just gonna improve more and more every day. You will over time, but you're still gonna have days where you struggle, and that's okay. And so it's important to be patient with yourself and let yourself have off days.
For someone who isn't dealing with mental illness directly, but knows someone who is, how do they approach the situation?
I think if you know someone who's struggling, the most important thing that you can do for them is not to treat them any differently. I think, you know, most people don't want you to feel sorry for them, but they do need to know that you care. And so if it's someone that's really close to you, I think it's okay to ask them not only just how you doing, but like how are you really, you know, it's okay to ask them if they're okay. It's okay to ask them if they're getting help or what you can do to help them. I think it's also important to know that some days, like if you have a friend that's struggling with mental illness, some days they're just going to have bad days, and there doesn't have to be a reason for it. There doesn't have to be a reason why they're feeling depressed or feeling anxious. Some days they just are feeling that way, and that's okay. And it's not your job to fix it either.
Yeah.
Right? The most important thing that you can do is just to be a good support. Good support for them, someone for them to listen to. They don't always need advice, but just for you to listen and for you to care.
What do you want to tell people who are too scared to talk about their mental illness?
In my experience, I've never had a bad reaction from telling someone. I think that I always thought people would think less of me, but if anything, they think more of you. And I would just say you have to start by telling one person. And you don't have to, you can be careful about who you tell. You don't have to tell everyone. You don't have to put a video on the internet. But just start by telling one person, and you won't regret it.